it hits you in the face when you walk in the house, that warmth and comfort. And not that anyone really needs to know this, but like, you know, I don't necessarily wear pajamas to bed every day. My name is Robert Vasquez, and welcome to the roast of... I have to try to find line here. We're going to be going through this website for an insulating product that is a sheet good, and they have some interesting things to say about spray foam. This website has so much writing on it. I don't want to say information, because information assumes fact. And while I'm not going to go out and say that they've posted blatant lies here, they definitely shade the writing to come across as information. I guess for the sake of clarity and objectivity, let's see what they have to say about all the other products that compete against them. Most of the people that I know in this industry actually install all insulation products. The insulation industry is not trying necessarily to get you to pick spray foam over cellulose or fiberglass. The insulation industry, insulation contractors, are trying to help you achieve an efficient and comfortable home within the confines of your budget. Products sell against each other. Spray foam companies sell against cellulose companies. Fiberglass companies sell against spray foam companies. Insulation contractors are just looking to help you insulate your house the best way that you can afford to do it. Foam insulation board that's rigid. Foam insulation board is rigid. Because it is not flexible, it does a poor job filling the gaps or cracks that may exist in your walls. As a result, you'll have air passageways in and out of your home. Air traveling in and out will bring moisture with it. This can lead to a multitude of problems such as mold, mildew, and rot. It also doesn't prevent radiant heat transfer. This is just a ridiculous paragraph. A good insulation company is going to use whatever products are necessary to air seal and insulate the home. So for whatever reason, let's say you wanted to insulate your home with rigid board. Any of the spaces that you couldn't cram a chunk of rigid board into are going to be air sealed with a mastic one-part foam. Everybody that I've known to install rigid foam into actual wall cavities has used one-part mastic foam to seal each piece into the wall cavity. So as far as not being able to air seal, okay, you're right, it's a chunk of foam that isn't going to be able to transition well to another surface, but that's why there's other products. As far as not preventing radiant heat transfer, they bring this up against spray foam as well, and that's just flat out wrong. And the easiest way to explain to you how wrong that is a coffee cup. There's three types of heat transfer: radiation, conduction, and convection. So consider a paper coffee cup and consider a foam coffee cup. Which one is going to prevent radiant heat transfer better? The foam one, obviously. If you get a brand new pot of coffee from your favorite convenience store and pour that into a paper cup, you could burn your hand. That's how hot sometimes that stuff comes out of there. If you were to put that same hot coffee into a polystyrene coffee cup, you're not going to burn your hand. It's going to stay hot longer. You're wrong. I'm sorry. So the fact that they say that foams don't prevent radiant heat transfer is almost like, why should I even go any further into this? But I guess for the sake of the video, we're going to have to. Moldy fiberglass insulation. Apparently, that's the only kind of insulation that you can have, is moldy fiberglass insulation. Moisture buildup between fiberglass and the building's exterior cannot evaporate. Therefore, mold, mildew, and decay occurs. Warnings on the insulation rolls advise you to completely protect yourself from coming into contact with fiberglass. Bats do not seal wall and ceiling cavities tightly. Fiberglass insulation R value is reduced by thermal bridging. pinching and moisture. Okay, let's dive into this one. Moisture occurs when hot meets cold and cold meets hot. So while theoretically there could be moisture where they're describing right here, there would be another reason for that. And this is actually one reason why spray foam is a superior product to fiberglass, is it fills all those little nooks and crannies. Now, there are actually very, very talented fiberglass installers who are capable of installing fiberglass like it was ironed into the wall. There's techniques that are used to make sure that these areas that are tricky get insulated, whether they're putting insulation behind electrical outlets or sliding pieces into areas that the average person would not even know exists. A good insulator will find those areas, and there's face stapling, there's taping techniques. You can insulate a house very well with fiberglass. It just takes a talented installer who cares about his job and time. Assuming that all fiberglass is going to mold is, again, categorically wrong. Wet cellulose insulation. Moisture absorption makes it heavier, causing it to lose R value. It is prone to create too much dust that is blown into the house through small cracks or holes around fixtures. It can be a health problem. Theoretically true, but only in a problem structure. A well-ventilated attic that is well blown with cellulose, or blown fiberglass for that matter, because cellulose is not the only loose fill blown insulation. You're not going to have problems with moisture. Moisture and condensation are signs of a problem. They aren't a problem. They're signs of other problems with insulation and air sealing. If the guy who is insulating the house is doing it objectively, it doesn't matter what product they're using. They're actually going to do an okay job. Let's move on to toxic spray foam insulation. Statements like this are what caused me to make videos like this. This one really takes the cake for me, honestly. The last three products that they were speaking of were more objective in their criticism of the product. And this is what I mean about fear-mongering with spray foam. Their paragraph on this is, if you need to wear a special suit, which is not spelled right, if you need to wear a special suit to install, it must not be very safe. Really? Really? There's a lot of products in your house that the people who work with them have to wear special suits because the chemicals that they use aren't safe. This mic cover right here is foam. It was made in a similar way as the foam in your house, just like the foam in the chair that I'm sitting on, just like the foam in the seat in my car, just like the foam in the couch that we sit on and compress every time we sit on them. Has anybody worried about your couch off-gassing every time you sat down and sat on it? Would you want to be in the warehouse that they're making all this foam? Of course not. They're completely safe and inert. I'm not going to eat this piece of foam right now, but if I did, I would not get sick. If I was to talk into this microphone for the next 30 years, I'm pretty confident that nothing is going to happen to me because of the proximity I was in to this foam. Even though it's inches from my mouth, it's going to become saturated with vapor from my voice, and it's going to be able to dry out, and that moisture is not going to affect this foam in any way. It's a thermoset plastic. This chemical insulation agent, polyurethane and isocyanine. Polyurethane is the product of mixing a particular blend of isocyanate with a particular B side. The isocyanate is the A side, and depending on what type of foam you're blending will determine the type of B side that you're going to use. And when that process is finished, you end up with polyurethane. Walk into Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards, any of your big box stores, or Sherwin-Williams, MAB. MAB's not around anymore. Benjamin Moore, whatever your local paint store is or anything like that, and you are going to see an entire wall of uncured polyurethane. Now, it's a different blend, than what we're using. Pick your favorite brand of polyurethane sealer. Read the label on that and see what those companies suggest that you wear or do while you're using those products. You're going to want to wear something similar to what a spray foam installer is going to wear, depending on the application. Now, if you have a small shelf that your son made and you're trying to stain it and seal it, you're going to use a little brush or a sponge or something like that, and you'll probably open a window and, everything's going to be okay. Now, if you have a ginormous curio cabinet that your father-in-law built you, like we have at my house, and you plan on spraying that entire piece with polyurethane, you're going to need a suit, you're going to need a mask, you're going to need to ventilate the space because you're rendering that aerosol. It doesn't matter what the chemical is or how quote unquote safe or inert it may be. If you render something airborne and you breathe it in, it's not going to be good for you. Even common dirt and dust. Obviously, any vaporized or aerosol chemical or agent is not going to be good for you. Packaging foam. Some packaging foam is actually identical to the spray foam that's being used in your house. They are not blending that under high pressure and spraying it out of a gun. But honestly, they might be able to have a small little station with a very powerful fan, and when the tech has to fill the box in the foam to make sure whatever part is in there doesn't get broken in shipping, he honestly might not even need to have a mask on as long as there's enough ventilation going through that area. Maybe he has to wear a mask when he does that, but again, it's a localized thing because it's not being rendered aerosol. Generally, issues that occur in homes come from installers who do not know what they're doing, which is why we encourage people to really vet the company, ask for pictures of their work. Not everybody is keen on giving up references, but generally any contractor is going to invite you to maybe the project that they're working on, or they'll turn you over to somebody that they have done work for in the past. Ironically, I'm sitting on top of 3 inches of closed-cell foam right now. This is a 3-season porch. Well, it used to be a 3-season porch, and it's closed in all the way around. Behind me, you see the fireplace, and you see a doorway, and actually on the other side of that fireplace is another doorway. I covered the fireplace in sheetrock and took the doors off because when my kids were younger, this was their playroom, and I knew they were going to be running circles around the fireplace, and I didn't want one of them to smash their face on the brick. So I covered it up and took the doors off so they weren't opening and closing the doors, opening and closing the doors. The other interesting thing about this room is there is no heat source, which is the other reason that I took the doors off, because if I have the doors on here and there's no heat out here, it's going to be extremely cold. So when I was able to, I insulated the crawl space with closed-cell foam. And there is no heater in here running right now at all. Tiny bit chillier than the rest of the house. And this is a 100-year-old house with radiators. I have not cut the ceiling open yet to foam it, but I would like to do that in the future. Yeah, it's 25 degrees outside right now, and I am in a 3-season porch with no heater, and I'm comfortable. The only reason I'm wearing the sweatshirt right now is because it has the logo on it. I could be in a t-shirt, honestly. Let's keep going. Collapsing bubble insulation. Bubble insulations are composed of either one single bubble or 2 bubble layers. Now, these are talking about the little snappy things that you love to pop when you're a kid. The air inside each bubble is actually what's giving you your insulation. Believe it or not, an airspace actually has R value. So they trap these air spaces in between these reflective layers, and it does function as insulation. It does work to some degree, but you're not going to be able to insulate your entire house with bubble wrap. Single bubble has a nominal thickness of 5/32 of an inch. Double bubble measures 5/16 of an inch. These measurements bear little resemblance to the effective measurement of the products. we see little difference between the performance of single and double bubble insulation. The latter simply has a second layer of air bubbles. Although we strongly recommend their own product, if your budget doesn't allow you to purchase their product, we suggest you order the single bubble rather than the double bubble. You'll get virtually all the benefits of the double bubble while saving money. I honestly can't comment on that. I don't know whether that's true or not. It's honestly the first time in this entire kind of section that I've gone through that they've even given any amount of credit to another insulating product. Just pick your top tier car, and if you were to go to any one of those companies' websites, whether it's Mercedes or BMW, Audi, any of these major top brands, you're not going to see a section on their website about why Chevy isn't as good. If your product is that good, you don't need to tell everybody how terrible all these other products are, because your product stands on its own 2 feet. Spray foam insulation, not enough for the heat, cold, and condensation of a metal building.
Oh my God.
Let's find out why.
Let's find out why.
People have been lying to me for like 15 years. And I just bought this whole thing. I've wasted my entire life and career on a product that is bullshit. It says that
this product is a radiant barrier and spray foam is not. I think I went over that already. R value unaffected by compression. In order to compress something, you need to disturb it. So, sure, if I was to go punch holes in the insulation and spray foam, the R value is going to go down. Just like if I took a knife to a sheet good and cut it, it's going to lose its qualities. So sure, some compression is going to change the R value of the product, but that's true for any insulating product. If you have a 3.5-inch piece of fiberglass and you smush it down into a 1-inch piece of fiberglass, you don't have the same physical properties that you used to have. Seals around punctures is what it looks like. I'm assuming what they're saying is that because this is kind of stretched film, that if it was to be pressed over a nail or something like that, it would seal around the nail. I find that hard to believe. To think that spray foam doesn't seal around punctures, I don't know if that means self-healing, in the sense that if you were to drive a nail through spray foam or something like that, it would not seal around itself, which is true to a degree, but it's easy enough to, remedy. If you drill a hole through the spray foam and you have to run a pipe or something, then you can just caulk around the pipe or use the can foam around that pipe. Spray foam is going to do a far better job around punctures than something that cannot repair itself. I don't care what they say. No nesting for rodents, bugs, and birds. Not true, because some of the assemblies that they propose for their product absolutely creates spaces for animals to nest in. Animals are looking for the same things that we are: shelter and food. So if your house is an energy hog and it's warm, and they are very good at finding warm locations, they will find a way in and build their nests. Actually, homes that are insulated with foam do a very good job keeping rodents and animals out, because not only do they seal all the small spots that those things get into your house through, they do a fantastic job insulating your house. So when the critter has a choice between your house and your neighbor's house, they're going to sense the heat coming from your neighbor's house. They're going to end up at your neighbor's house. If you have an infestation, that has nothing to do with spray foam. If you have an infestation, you have other things to worry about. You need to call an exterminator. There are things you can do if you kind of have animals that, for one reason or another, know that your place is the place to be, whether it's wire mesh or things like that over areas that generally are susceptible to animals. It's how they're presenting what they're saying, which is just misdirection. So if the average person would go on one of these pages that is just crammed full of writing, because I'm not going to say information. I don't understand how you can read through this and be like, I feel like I really got all the answers right there. Like, I don't know how you can't see through the sales pitch. Spray-on insulation doesn't solve the condensation, heat, and cold in metal buildings. You can create condensation problems with insulation if you don't know what you're doing. That has nothing to do with spray foam. That's any product. This product, fiberglass, cellulose, rigid board, it doesn't matter. Condensation comes from two ways generally in a house. The condensation that we add to the house by taking a shower or cooking or a body, breath, stuff like that, and then heat transfer. Depending on how much heat transfer you have going in your house and how good your ventilation is, you can have issues with condensation. The condensation comes from not having the right amount of ventilation. So if you have a seasonal kind of change depending on where you are in the country, it will be extremely hot during the day and then extremely cold at night. And that's really when most of that condensation is going to occur. In the South, people tend to be mostly cooling. In the North, we tend to be mostly heating. And that all plays a role in what is going on with insulating the house, how you insulate the house, and what can be causing condensation. Metal buildings require an insulation that doesn't just protect from the cold, it must provide protection from radiant heat and condensation. The proper assembly is what prevents condensation. As far as radiant heat goes, again, we addressed that already. I don't know why they're saying that foam doesn't stop radiant heat. It can seem like a tropical rainforest inside an unprotected metal building. It's worse on those days where there is a greater contrast between temperatures at night versus during the day. First true thing that they said, the morning sun hitting the cool sheeting will create a drip. A temperature difference between outside and inside your building creates condensation. Yes, correct. Similar to what happens when you leave a cold can of beer outside on a hot day. If for some reason you decide to try and DIY this, and you get one of those little, propane tank kits, you have to ensure that you are getting a proper reaction. As the average homeowner, you don't even know what that looks like. DIY spray foam insulation is no different than high pressure spray foam insulation. The formulations are slightly different so that the one can be sprayed at low pressures, but they're both polyurethane closed cell foam. You would have no clue. You could look at it and you would think that it was done with a giant machine that costs thousands and thousands of dollars. Somebody who knows what they're doing can do that. The average homeowner is not going to be able to do that. It's great that this product claims to stop 98% of radiant heat energy. While radiant heat energy is a large driver of energy loss in a house, modern building science shows that air sealing is the biggest problem in the average home build. Your walls could be a foot thick and your ceiling could be 2 feet thick, and you could have the best insulating product to stop radiant heat transfer. If that's not air sealed, when it gets cold outside and you're heating, the cold air is going to get in. Vice versa, when it's hot outside and you're cooling, your cold air is going to get out. The way they frame this makes it sound like if you use this product, it's going to be 97% effective, which is not true at all. If you're building in an area where you don't have to worry about meeting code, that's great for you. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider why certain codes are what they are. You're not going to get a chance to do it again. And I know people who have built big houses, and they have installed different types of insulation, and in less than 2 years, they have removed as much insulation as they could get out of that house and reinstalled spray foam. This is not a pitch. These are people that chose to not use spray foam on considerable size houses that cost a lot of money to run. And in the first year, we're like, this was a huge mistake. Sucked out brand new insulation and reinstalled spray foam. Vapor barrier. A vapor barrier is only good as the install. If you take a sheet and you don't seal that sheet well, or you put a bunch of penetrations in it, you don't have a vapor barrier anymore. What makes this product superior to spray foam? An air barrier. Spray foam is the best air barrier on the market. If you install closed cell spray foam, it is an air and vapor barrier for all purposes that you will need in a residential build. Prevents condensation? No, it doesn't prevent condensation. The only thing that prevents condensation is the install properly done. You could install this product in your house and have major condensation problems if you don't put it in there right. I'm not saying that you can't use this product or that you can't use it in conjunction with fiberglass or cellulose or even spray foam. It's the companies that try to say that their product somehow does a better job than spray foam and that spray foam has no place in the market. And that's just ridiculous. It does not promote mold or mildew. Categorically wrong. Again, if you have a situation for condensation, you are going to create mildew, you're going to create mold. Rigid stock or spray foam are the only FEMA approved insulations for below the floodplain because they can be submerged and not removed. If those things are done with any other product, fiberglass, cellulose, and they flood, it's got to come out. It's got to be replaced. I'm going to go back to a point they made about spray foam insulation because I always find it best to use context in what I'm talking about. If you need to wear a special suit to install it, it must not be very safe. Well, if you need to name your website, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you're probably not a trusted source. There are organizations like buildingscience.com that are a collaboration of experts in what they do that have compiled objective information for people to go through and educate themselves. That is a source. This is not a source. This is drivel. If somebody came to me and wanted objective opinion on spray foam, I will send you to somewhere like buildingscience.com. I'm not going to send you to a spray foam company. I'm going to send you somewhere that is going to be objective about the topic of discussion. Please, if you're researching spray foam, consider the source. I'm not telling you to take my sole word for it. Do your research. Find out information about there, but find objective information out there. Like if you're apprehensive about using spray foam, I understand. I don't feel that way. My whole roof is done. The crawl space underneath me is done. The band joist in my basement is done, and it has benefited my family greatly. My bills for this house are the same as the 2-bedroom apartment that we used to live in. Nobody's sick. We don't have moisture problems. We don't have condensation problems. My garage is done. The only reason that my drum set is in that garage is because of the spray foam. Because before that, the amount of dust and the nasty, humid, gross air that would be in there in the summer and how freezing it would be in the winter, I would never keep my drum set in there, ever. And because it is foamed, it doesn't matter how hard I hit those drums. They are spotless. My old drum set used to be in there, and I wouldn't even have to play it. Just the wind would blow dirt and dust and grime. My drums and cymbals would be covered in filth. Not that somebody who already has experienced spray foam isn't a biased opinion, but I think their opinion is worthy. That's really what I feel like is going on a lot of these Facebook groups and pages like this, is they are appealing to your fear because they want you to buy their product. And because you have fear and apprehension, when you see somebody that corroborates that fear, the job is done. And that's why I'm even looking at this in the first place, because somebody took the bait, basically, and is like,
well, I can't use spray foam. Look at what this says.
You know what I mean? Well, okay. But again, consider the source. Here is a source who took the time to read through all this stuff, has been living in a house that's spray foamed for well over 10 years. I have musical instruments in an exterior garage that are only there because it's spray foamed. And I have a wife and kids who live in this house who are all happy and healthy. You know, honestly, as far as that goes, spray foam's actually not a problem, but I never got yelled at because it was too warm before we foamed the house. And my wife, she has a fan going all year. I love it. I think the heat in the wintertime when it's freezing outside and I come walking into my house, it hits you in the face when you walk in the house, that warmth and comfort. And not that anyone really needs to know this, but like, you know, I don't necessarily wear pajamas to bed every day, and it's beautiful. Upstairs is beautiful. My wife thinks it's a little too warm sometimes, but the arguments used to shift, and it's efficient too. And, for a young family with kids, I'm not complaining about the bills either. So do I have any idea how much it saved me over 10 years? Not really. And there's people who have the documents to prove that. When you sell a house, a lot of times you're turning over the electric bill and the gas bill for the prior, seasonal cycle or however that works. And I know of inspectors who have seen those bills and they don't believe them because they have seen other homes in the area that are either identical or very similar, and they have double the bills until they learn that the house is foamed, and then they get it.